I'm James and I'm here today to talk to you about the Witcher Netflix series. Just when I thought I was going to be taking a little break from talking about the Witcher, we now have to talk about the adaptation, which seems to have been picking up steam. The big news, of course, is that Henry Cavill now is Geralt of Rivia. And I think, I know I'm late to this party now. I saw so many videos like 10 minutes after it was announced that were just like, didn't really say anything. Just they didn't say anything about it. They just kind of said, yeah, he's Geralt now, and to wait and see is the general tone of the videos that I've seen. I think it's clear that he was never really a front runner to be Geralt for anyone. And I'm just going to come straight out and say it. I'm incredibly worried about The Witcher Netflix. And I'm now leaning towards that it's going to be shit. and I've got some reasons for that go a little bit further than just Henry Cavill. I would say actually, out of everything that we know so far about The Witcher on Netflix, Henry Cavill being Geralt is probably the least worrying thing. My initial reaction to hearing that he was cast was my visceral initial gut reaction was, oh no, what have they done? And the reason for that is not because I think Henry Cavill is a bad actor. I've really not seen him in enough to really make that assessment. I haven't seen the new Mission Impossible at the moment. I've never saw The Tudors, which was something he was in, but apparently he was alright in that. And then the only thing I've seen him in is Man of Steel. And Man of Steel is fucking garbage. But it wasn't his fault. Like, he was just doing what he could with the material given to him. And it's hard to add new depth to a character that is quite so ubiquitously, I don't know, he's just so contained as Superman. So I can't really blame his acting, but it's the casting decision itself that worries me. And here's why. So, first thing that worries me is this is a Netflix production, right? Netflix shows, for me, have been incredibly hit or miss. In fact, all Netflix productions, really, for me, have been really hit or miss. I am one of those people that really doesn't like Stranger Things. I just couldn't get into it. I've got nothing against it. It wasn't like the worst garbage ever, but I don't care. Orange is the New Black is okay, but I think the common consensus now is that it's going downhill. All of their cartoons they do, I don't care about. I don't watch cartoons, really. Just all these shows that they do, and there's more and more shows like every other day, right? Because Netflix now, they're worried, they're panicked because all of these the traditional cable companies, the big TV companies, are now all going to be making their own streaming services, which means Netflix is going to be forced to rely more and more on its original content. But the original content that they're making is not as high a quality as it is for shows that are being made on other traditional channels still. I think one of the biggest red flags for me in terms of them doing anything of this high budget is Bright. You know that Will Smith film that's about orcs in the modern day? Like, that film is real bad. The effects in it are pretty bad. I mean, you can probably blame Max Landis for most of it because, he wrote it. It's probably his fault. But yeah, I'm really nervous because something like The Witcher needs to be handled with a degree of care, and I don't believe that the show is in the right hands. This isn't a case of, right, so let's talk about, obviously, the big parallel that people are going to be drawing is to Game of Thrones, right? Because that's where the vacuum is. That's why all these things are happening now. So Game of Thrones is ending next year. The Witcher is set to premiere next year. Just looking at IMDb here. Also, we're going to be getting a Lord of the Rings show from Amazon. We're getting the Wheel of Time from Amazon. All of these shows, Witcher, Lord of the Rings, and Eye of the World, they're all rushing now to fill the void of Game of Thrones. Because Game of Thrones is a big popular fantasy series that has made millions and millions and millions of dollars. Simple as that. They're chasing the trend. That's what I'm really nervous about, first of all. The story behind Game of Thrones being turned into a TV show is actually very interesting. Because George didn't really want it. He owned the rights to it. I don't think any one company, I'm pretty sure, didn't own the rights to it. Like HBO didn't own the rights to The Witcher or anything. It was a decision that was made by George Martin to allow them to do it. And the reason he allowed them to do it is because Benioff and Weiss, the showrunners, the show creators, came to him and they pitched him. Like, they had a couple of meetings with him. They pitched him the ideas, and he believed in them as true fans of his work that were really passionate about bringing this. Like, he didn't go to them, they came to him. And that was a really good sign from the get-go for that show. And say what you want about Benioff and Weiss and how Game of Thrones is now, and believe me, I have said what I think it is now. And if you don't believe me, go to the blog, plotsandpoints.wordpress.whatever, the links below. I've written a whole article about how the writing in Game of Thrones has just become the writing of WWE, but that's besides the point. The point is, these two guys really went in with the idea that they want to adapt this show. They had a set vision for what they wanted to do, and they followed through on it. And like, it's been pretty well documented that some of the reason at least, for why the show sort of dipped in quality is because they'd done what they wanted to do. Like, they wanted to get up to that Red Wedding moment, and then like they didn't really have a plan for it after that, so it kind of all fell apart. Now the problem with The Witcher stems with the showrunner. First of all, like, let's just open up IMDb here, full cast and crew. Obviously, cast, we've just got Henry Cavill attached. Okay, like Henry Cavill. I'm sure the guy can probably do a decent job, but I mean, he doesn't really look like Geralt, and I understand that movie effects and TV effects and stuff, costuming, has a huge impact on that, and like, he could very well end up looking like Geralt of Rivia, but I do worry that he is going to be Superman underneath it. Like, that's the problem, right? Because he's already played such a recognizable character now, that it's going to be hard for him to chameleon in to being Geralt. So I'm just looking for the crew list. Here we go. Right, so producers. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 producers. 8 producers on this show. None of them are Andrei Sapkowski, by the way, because we'll talk about him in a minute. So let's look. First of all, cinematography plays a big part in how a show's going to look. So what's he done in the past? Like, that's it, man. Every time I open one of these fucking these people's like backlog of work, like, I'm always immediately like, oh god. So he was the cinematographer on Netflix's Marco Polo, which I've not seen, but I don't think many people like it. I'm worried. And he was also the cinematographer on Black Sails. It looks like he's only attached at the moment to the pilot of Witcher, which is another concern. So, producers, we're looking at the writing team. Here we go, the writing team. This show is 8 episodes long, by the way, this is confirmed. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 writers. 7 if you count Andrzej Sapkowski, which you can't because well, it looks like he was involved in one episode as well, actually. So Andrzej Sapkowski has written one episode. The rest is written. So there's 7 episodes. There's 8 episodes being written by 7 different people. They've got 3 directors attached. One guy is directing 4, and 2 other people are directing 2 each. Let's see what these directors have done. So Alex Zakharov is the main director. Okay. So he did cinematography on Game of Thrones. He was the director on House of Cards, probably like an episode. He did the cinematography for HBO's Rome and The Sopranos. So he's more of a cinematographer that Netflix... Like, he's a cinematographer for other HBO shows that Netflix took and said, you can be our director now. Oh, God. Why? Why is he like this? Why is everything so bad about this show every time? Charlotte Brandstrom is the next one. Let's see what her credits are. Known for... She was a director on The Disappearance. I've never heard of it. Like this person is just a no-name. They've done something called Johann Falk. I don't know what that is. Okay. See, and this is the problem, right? So you've got Henry Cavill. He's this big Hollywood guy. But then the rest of it is just being handled by literally no one that you will ever have heard of. Lauren Schmidt is one of the writers. Producer on Daredevil, Netflix's Daredevil, miscellaneous crew on The West Wing, and that is basically how the credits roll out for the rest of these writers, right? So the writing team for The Witcher Netflix is just staff members from Netflix who have been producers on like all of their Marvel shows. So Daredevil, The Defenders, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist. Which got really bad reviews. So basically, here's the story of it. So Netflix has purchased the rights to make a Witcher spin-off or a Witcher adaptation. They didn't bother to get anyone with a name attached to it. You know, like with Mindhunter, they got David Fincher. Who is obviously a name, and he's a man with a vision to drive the show. Here, they've got 6 of their writers who were producers on other shows that they've done. The person in charge is just a no-name. No one cares. No one approached Sapkowski and was like, we really, really want to... Like, no one discovered the Witcher books, or the games or anything, fell in love with them and pushed this project. This was like, it looks like a corporate decision by Netflix to make this adaptation to fill the vacuum left behind by Game of Thrones. And they, like, the very fact that their first instinct was to hire Superman just tells to me that they don't care enough about the material. They don't want to make the material as faithful as possible to the books that they can. That's not what this show is about. This is a show written by committee, produced by committee, designed just as a fucking rush to fill the void of Game of Thrones. And they're doing now... The casting has now come out, and the first casting is like the most obvious stunt cast you've ever seen. I know Henry Cavill has tweeted out that he likes the Witcher books. I don't know how long he's liked them for. If maybe he just heard that they were going to get in for this and he read them and he liked them or whatever. Or if he's a big fan. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, this isn't really about Henry Cavill as a guy. I'm sure he's great, but that's not why they hired him, is it? Let's be honest. He doesn't have the Geralt look. He's never really been anything remotely Witcher-like. It's not... they didn't hire him because he's a fit for the role. They hired him because he fits the marketing, right, that they want to do. They want to make this a big thing. But there's no budget for that, is there, at Netflix? I'm really fucking concerned that this is going to be really cheap, because they are going to... It's just one of, like, a fucking glutton of shows that they are pushing out. And I don't think they care about it. I think if it died on its arse, they wouldn't give a fuck. And that's really sad. I don't think they have a proper vision for this show. I think these 6 different people are all pitching in their ideas for what they want to do, and it's going to be a fucking mess. And they're probably just going to just do whatever they can to appeal to literally as many human beings as possible, rather than letting the stories tell it, like, stand on its own. They don't want to retell Sapkowski's story, man. They just want to make the fucking money off of it. And speaking of Sapkowski, obviously we can see that he's been credited for a few things. He's a writer, apparently, of the novel, and obviously of the novel, but on apparently one episode. He's not listed as a producer, and I believe he has cut ties with the production. Now I'm going to search this up. Witcher, Netflix, Sapkowski leaves. Because if that's true, we need... Yeah, here we go. Sapkowski has stepped away, and he won't consult on the show anymore. Well, doesn't that say it all? Like, George Martin was really involved with Game of Thrones for a really long time, until obviously he had to step back really to work on the books. Come on, George. But it looks like he's not any way involved in the development of the series. Yeah, so he was consulting with them, and now he's not. The problem here is Sapkowski's a weird one, right? Because he doesn't like the games either, but what you got to understand about that is he really had literally no involvement with that. He sold the rights to the video game adaptation, like, almost immediately after he'd written the series, like, really early 2000s. And video games at that time, he didn't think would ever really take off, because he's a curmudgeon-y old man. And it was just such a fucking fluke that they blew up the way they did, because the very first Witcher game is not all that. And it wasn't brilliantly well received. It's just like the fucking skill of the people at CD Projekt Red that caused that game, like The Witcher 3, to blow up the way it did. Now, the fact that Sapkowski was on board with the show, he was working with them, and has seen something, he's obviously seen something that he don't like. And when you're adapting a novel, like, a novel is a singular vision of one person, right? It's not written by committee. It's not written to appeal to a weird mass audience most of the time. It's the story the writer wanted to tell, because before it's been written and sold, like, it doesn't even exist. So, like, there's no one asked him to write The Witcher. He wrote it himself because it's what he wanted. So the fact that the people adapting it have put him off fucking worries me. Along with everything else, like, I'm concerned. I don't want to be one of those people that, like, completely writes off a project before it's even seen, like, the first fucking screen image or whatever. But all signs right now point to disaster for Netflix's The Witcher. I don't think it's going to be handled very well. The casting of Henry Cavill, whilst not like a nail in the coffin all on its own, but combined with everything else, it's cause for concern. So that's really it. All I have to say on the matter. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.